I still remember the exact moment my heart finally hardened like stone. Strange how after decades of small disappointments, it was something so seemingly ordinary that pushed me beyond my breaking point. But that's exactly how it happens, isn't it? A lifetime of quiet sacrifices, of swallowing your hurt, of making excuses for people who should care about you the most. And then one day, one moment, one sentence, and everything just shatters. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. This journey is just beginning, and I suspect some of you might recognize what comes next. My name is Marie Thompson. Most people call me Marie, though my stepdaughter Rachel hasn't called me anything at all in almost 2 years. Not until the wedding invitation arrived. I live alone in a comfortable Spanish-style house in the hills outside San Diego, the same house where I raised Thomas's children after their mother died when Rachel was 9 and David was 12. It's peaceful now, of course. The walls that once echoed with homework arguments, piano practice and teenage drama now hold only the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the occasional purr from Oliver, my grey tabby who's almost as old as my estrangement from Rachel. The invitation arrived on a Wednesday, printed on thick cream paper with gold embossing. You're cordially invited to celebrate the marriage of Rachel Thompson and Marcus Sterling. It read in elegant script. 2 years of cold silence and now this. Not a phone call, not a coffee meeting. Just a formal invitation to celebrate a wedding I didn't even know was happening. I should have declined immediately. Part of me wanted to. But despite everything, a small voice whispered that maybe this was her way of reaching out, a chance to rebuild what we'd lost. That small voice had been wrong so many times before. But hope is a persistent thing. I called David first, my stepson, the diplomat, the one who still visited for holidays and my birthday, though always alone, never bringing his wife Jennifer or their 2 children, the one who claimed he was caught in the middle, but somehow always sided with his sister when it really mattered. "Marie, you should go," he said, his voice careful, measured. "Rachel's been different lately, more mature. She mentions you sometimes." "What does she say?" I asked, trying not to sound too eager. A pause. "She says she misses how things used to be." I didn't mention that the way things used to be meant Rachel living in my house for 8 months after her first divorce, rent-free, while I covered her expenses from my real estate income. Or that it meant me providing childcare every weekend so she could pursue her CPA certification. Or that it meant me co-signing the loan for her accounting practice, the one that struggled when she lost focus, leaving me to cover the payments well into my retirement years. Instead, I said, I miss those times too. I spent $500 I could afford but preferred not to spend on a designer dress for the occasion. I had my hair styled at the salon I'd been going to for 15 years. I bought new jewelry that complemented the champagne-colored outfit I'd chosen. I even practiced what I would say when I saw her. Nothing about the past, nothing about the hurt, just how happy I was for her, how beautiful she looked. The wedding reception was held at the Grand Del Mar, a luxury resort with manicured gardens and a ballroom that sparkled with crystal chandeliers. I recognized some faces from Rachel's social circle, several relatives from Marcus's prominent family. David was there with Jennifer, though they were engaged in animated conversation with Marcus's parents and didn't notice my arrival. Rachel was stunning in a flowing ivory gown that emphasized her tall frame. Her dark hair swept into an elegant chignon, her face glowing with happiness. She had always been the beautiful one, the charismatic one, the one who commanded attention when she entered a room. She saw me. For a moment her smile flickered, and I felt my own smile freezing in place. But then she walked over, accepted my somewhat awkward embrace with a brief stiff one of her own. "You came," she said, not quite looking directly at me. "Of course," I replied. "I wouldn't miss your special day." "You look absolutely radiant," she nodded, glancing around the ballroom as if searching for someone to rescue her from this conversation. "Thank you for coming. There's cocktails and appetizers at the bar. I should get back to greeting the other guests." And she was gone, absorbed into a group of well-dressed women who surrounded her, touching her dress, laughing at whatever story she was telling. I found a seat at a table toward the back, placed my wedding gift on the designated table that was already overflowing with elegantly wrapped packages. A server offered me champagne, but I requested sparkling water instead. I wanted to stay sharp, to not give anyone a reason to whisper about me. An hour passed. I made polite conversation with a colleague of Marcus's who didn't know who I was. watched as Rachel and Marcus performed their first dance to applause and camera flashes. My gift remained buried somewhere in the pile of presents, and then it was time for the speeches. Marcus went first, thanking everyone for celebrating with them, his arm protectively around Rachel's waist. Next came David, surprisingly eloquent as he read a poem about love and commitment that brought tears to several guests' eyes. I noticed he avoided looking in my direction throughout his speech. Then Rachel stood, one hand smoothing her dress, the other holding a glass of champagne. "I want to thank all of you for being here," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom, "for supporting us on this incredible journey. Getting married is both terrifying and wonderful, and having all of you in our lives means everything to us." She turned slightly and I realized she was looking at an elegant woman in her 60s with perfectly styled silver hair and a Chanel suit. Vivian Mitchell, Thomas's first wife, Rachel's mother who had died over 20 years ago. Wait, no. This was someone else entirely. A woman I didn't recognize but who was clearly important to Rachel. But I especially want to thank someone who has been my guiding light, especially these past few years. Someone who showed me what real motherhood looks like. Patient, nurturing, and completely selfless. I felt my chest constrict. Was this the moment I'd been hoping for after all this time? "Margaret," Rachel continued, her voice thick with emotion. "This is for you." The room seemed to fade around me as she raised her glass higher. "This is the woman I wish had been my mother. She will be the only true grandmother to my future children." The ballroom erupted in applause. Margaret stood, dabbing at her eyes, embracing my stepdaughter. While Marcus beamed beside them. David was clapping too, his eyes carefully avoiding the back corner where I sat, frozen, my untouched sparkling water trembling slightly in my hand. No one noticed when I stood. No one noticed when I walked out, leaving the expensive crystal vase behind. No one called after me or followed me to the parking lot where I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, not crying. No, not crying at all because something was happening inside me. Something cold and clarifying like ice water flowing slowly, deliberately through my veins. Every slight, every disappointment, every moment I had rationalized away with, "But she's my stepdaughter. But I chose this family." It all crystallized into a single sharp point of understanding. I'd been a fool, a complete and utter fool. I drove home in a state of such calm that it should have alarmed me. But fear requires uncertainty, and I was no longer uncertain about anything. That night I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my attorney, the one who had helped me organize my real estate investments, who had drawn up my will years ago, naming Rachel and David as beneficiaries of my property portfolio and investment accounts. The second call was to Samuel Hart, an old friend who worked in private investigations. We dated briefly after Thomas's death, but remained friends when the romance didn't develop. The third call was to a storage facility downtown, where I rented a climate-controlled unit and arranged for round-the-clock access. I slept peacefully that night and woke before sunrise. By the time the sun rose, I had already packed several boxes and loaded them into my SUV. Old photo albums, school reports, art projects, and awards I'd carefully preserved. 25 years of memories documented and saved because that's what mothers do. But I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was something else now, someone else. As I pulled into the storage facility, my phone rang. It was David. "Marie, where did you go last night? Rachel was looking for you." The lie came easily. I wasn't feeling well. The crowd, the noise. I didn't want to spoil her day. "Oh." He sounded relieved, probably that he wouldn't have to defend my early departure to his sister. "Well, she wanted to thank you for the crystal vase. It was really beautiful." "I'm glad she appreciated it," I said, my voice pleasant but hollow. "Listen, Marie. What Margaret said, what Rachel said about her. You know how Rachel gets emotional at big events. She didn't mean anything by it. It's fine, David. Really, I understand perfectly now." And I did. For the first time in decades, I understood exactly what I needed to do. "I have to go," I told him. "I have a busy day ahead." As I hung up, I looked at the boxes in my back seat, the physical evidence of a lifetime of love and care soon to be locked away. Tomorrow much more would join them, and the day after that something would arrive at Rachel's door that would change everything. Because I had finally learned what my stepchildren had known all along, that love without respect is just another form of servitude. And I was done serving. The first package arrived at Rachel's door exactly 1 week after the wedding. I know because I had it delivered with a signature requirement, timed for 1000 a.m., early enough to disrupt their morning routine, but not so early that they could claim harassment. Inside was a simple leather-bound ledger. On the cover, embossed in gold financial support records, Rachel Thompson, 2010-2024. No note, no explanation. Just 14 years of meticulously organized bank statements, receipts and loan documents. Every dollar I'd provided, every bill I'd paid, every financial rescue I'd mounted, detailed with dates and amounts totaling just over $280,000. My phone rang that afternoon as I was pruning roses in my garden. Oliver lounged nearby in a patch of sunshine, his tail twitching occasionally when a hummingbird visited the feeder. "What the hell is this?" Rachel's voice was sharp, indignant. "Hello, Rachel. I assume you received my wedding gift." "Gift? You call this a gift? A bunch of old receipts? What are you trying to prove?" I snipped a spent bloom, watching as it fell to the ground. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm simply organizing my financial records. By sending me this ledger. What am I supposed to do? Pay you back now?" After what Margaret said at the wedding, "You're trying to make me feel guilty." I almost laughed at the irony. The speech Margaret gave. "I believe it was you who said she was the mother you wished you'd had. The only true grandmother to your future children." Silence, then a huff. "You know I didn't mean it like that. I was emotional. Brides say things at weddings." "Yes," I agreed mildly. "People say things, and sometimes those things are exactly what they mean. So this is what, revenge? You're itemizing what you think I owe you for being my stepmother?" I cut another dead bloom. "Not at all. Consider it a wedding gift, a record of generosity for you to pass down to your children. A family legacy." "You're incredible," she spat. "I'm hanging up." "Before you do," I said, my voice still calm, pleasant even, "you might want to tell David to check his mail tomorrow." She hung up without another word. I continued with my gardening, feeling the warmth of the sun on my shoulders, the slight ache in my knees as I knelt among the flowers. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened, free. The next day, David received his package similar to Rachel's, but with one key difference. His contained not only financial records, but also printed copies of emails and text messages, conversations between him and his sister about me, planning sessions on how to handle the Marie situation, discussions about keeping their children away from my controlling influence, messages I never should have seen except that Samuel Hart was very good at his job and David had always been careless with his digital security. His call came in the evening. His voice low, controlled, always the diplomat. "My David." "Marie, what are you doing?" "Hello, David. Did you receive something interesting in the mail?" A long pause. "This isn't like you." "No?" I asked, genuinely curious. "What am I like then?" Another pause. "You're patient, understanding. You don't hold grudges." "Ah," I said, stirring the soup I was making for dinner. "And how has that worked out for me?" "Marie, if this is about what Rachel said at the wedding..." "It's not just about the wedding, David. It's about 2 decades of taking and taking and taking while I kept giving. It's about you telling your wife that I'm emotionally manipulative, and that's why you don't bring the children to see me. It's about Rachel borrowing money she never intended to repay while complaining to her friends about my old-fashioned ways and embarrassing questions." His breathing changed. "How do you know about those conversations? Does it matter? They happened. You said those things. You meant them. People say things they don't mean when they're frustrated," he argued. But his voice had lost its certainty. "Perhaps," I conceded. "But when those things are said consistently over years to multiple people, that's not frustration, David. That's character. So what do you want? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. We're sorry. Just stop whatever this is." I tasted my soup. It needed more herbs. It's far too late for apologies. And this isn't something that can be stopped. This is consequence, David. This is what happens when people mistake kindness for weakness for too long. "Are you threatening us?" Now there was an edge to his voice. "Not at all," I said, adding fresh basil to the pot. "I'm simply informing you of a change in our relationship dynamic. For decades, it's been about what you need, what Rachel needs. Now it's about what I deserve. And what's that supposed to mean? It means there will be 2 more deliveries. One tomorrow, one the day after, and then we'll be finished." He started to say something else, but I hung up. Oliver jumped onto the counter, eyeing my soup hopefully. I scratched behind his ears, smiling at his rumbling purr. "No soup for you," I told him. "But I think we have some of that expensive salmon left." The next morning, identical manila envelopes arrived at Rachel's and David's homes. Inside each was a copy of my new will, dated the day after the wedding. It outlined in clear legal language how my estate, my properties, my savings, my investment portfolio would now be divided. 40% to the local medical clinic where I volunteered, 30% to the nursing school scholarship fund, 30% to a trust for any grandchildren who sought contact with me after turning 18. Nothing for Rachel. Nothing for David. Also included was documentation of the irrevocable trust I'd established, ensuring they couldn't contest the will after my death. Rachel called, screaming about family loyalty and selfishness. I let it go to voicemail. David texted, "We need to talk." I didn't respond. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in years, knowing that tomorrow would bring the final piece of my plan. The piece that would hurt the most because it wasn't about money or inheritance or material things. It was about memory, about legacy, about who we really are when all the pretense is stripped away. The final packages were larger, requiring special delivery. Heavy boxes containing photo albums, school reports, art projects, awards, all the physical evidence that I had been a stepmother who cared, who showed up, who celebrated every milestone, who kept every drawing, every Mother's Day card. Every report card with one crucial difference in each item where my name had been. It was now carefully removed and replaced with Vivian Mitchell. Every To Marie inscription altered. Every Marie Thompson proud parent digitally changed in the photographs of school events. I had effectively erased myself from their histories and replaced myself with the woman my stepdaughter wished had raised her. Rachel arrived at my door 3 hours later, the box clutched in her arms, her face red with tears. David's car pulled up just behind hers. For a moment, seeing them there on my porch, my stepchildren coming home, I felt a flicker of something. Not regret exactly, but remembrance of who we had been to each other once. Then Rachel spoke and the moment passed. "How could you do this?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "These are our memories." I looked at her calmly. "Are they? I thought you'd prefer Vivian in them." They stood there on my porch, my stepchildren, now grown adults with lives of their own, looking at me as if I were a stranger. Perhaps I was. Perhaps the stepmother they thought they knew had never existed at all. Just a convenient fiction they'd created to justify their behavior. "May I help you?" I asked, as if they were door-to-door salespeople interrupting my evening. "Help us?" David echoed, his voice strained. "Marie, you've altered family heirlooms. You've digitally changed our entire childhood." I stepped aside, gesturing for them to enter. No point having this conversation for the neighbors to hear. They hesitated, then came in, Rachel still clutching the box of altered memories, David following with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. My living room was immaculate. I'd been cleaning obsessively since the wedding, removing photos of them from the walls, putting away the gifts they'd given me over the years. The space felt lighter, less burdened with sentiment. "What I've done," I said calmly, "is honor your wishes." Rachel made it very clear who she considers her true mother figure. I'm simply adjusting our shared reality to match. "This isn't reality," Rachel spat, dropping the box onto my coffee table with a thud. A few altered photos spilled out. Her high school graduation, her college ceremony. This is sick. "It's manipulative." "Is it?" I asked, genuinely curious. "You stand in front of a room full of people and declare another woman to be the mother you wished you'd had. And that's not manipulative? That's not sick?" David stepped between us, ever the mediator. "Marie, what Rachel said was wrong. We both know that. But this," he gestured to the box, "this is not the way to handle it." "And what is the way to handle it, David?" I asked, my voice still even. Should I have cried, made a scene, begged for my stepdaughter's love and approval? Tell me, since you seem to be an expert on family dynamics, what is the appropriate response when your stepdaughter publicly rejects everything you've ever done for her? He had no answer. Of course he didn't. Rachel was leafing through the altered photos now, her hands trembling slightly. "How did you even do this? There are hundreds of photos here." "I have time," I said simply. "And motivation." "But why?" she asked, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "What's the point of all this? To hurt us? To make us feel guilty?" I considered the question carefully before answering. "No, Rachel. Not to hurt you or to instill guilt. Those are emotions. And this isn't about emotions anymore. This is about truth, about consequences, about the stories we tell ourselves and others." David ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father it made my chest tighten for a moment. So what's the end game here, Marie? You cut us out of your will. You alter our childhood memories. You send us financial records of everything you've ever spent on us. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said, and I meant it. I want absolutely nothing from either of you. That's the point. They exchanged glances, clearly not believing me. I've spent decades wanting from you, I continued. Wanting your time, your consideration, your respect. Wanting to be included in your lives in any meaningful way. Wanting acknowledgement for the sacrifices I made. I'm done wanting. I'm done hoping. I'm done making excuses for behavior that if it came from anyone else would be considered unacceptable. Rachel's hand moved protectively to her flat stomach. So that's it. You're just cancelling us, your own stepchildren, your future grandchildren. I'm not cancelling anyone, I corrected her. I'm accepting the reality you've both created. In that reality, I am not a stepmother worthy of respect or kindness. I am not a grandmother who deserves to know her grandchildren. I am at best an obligation, at worst an embarrassment. That's not fair, David protested, but weakly. Isn't it? I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder, handing it to him. These are printouts of your conversations with Jennifer about me, about how I'm too controlling, how I always make everything about myself, about how you avoid bringing the children to see me because I'm difficult to be around. His face paled as he flipped through the pages. How did you get these? I ignored the question. And these, I said, handing a similar folder to Rachel, are your text exchanges with friends after I helped you with your CPA exam preparation. The ones where you mock my medical background, my volunteer work, my outdated opinions, where you tell them I'm only good for financial support and free babysitting. Rachel's cheeks flushed dark red. You spied on us. You hacked our accounts. That's illegal. So is fraud, I replied evenly, which is what you committed when you used my credit card to pay for your honeymoon expenses without my knowledge. Or when David borrowed my car and got a speeding ticket that he never told me about, leaving me to deal with the consequences. I sat down in my armchair, suddenly tired. Not emotional, just physically exhausted by their presence, their indignation, their refusal to see themselves clearly. I don't expect either of you to understand what I'm doing, or why, I said. I don't expect apologies or remorse. Those things would require self-awareness that you've never demonstrated. What I do expect is for you to leave my home now and to respect the boundaries I've established. Boundaries? David looked bewildered. What boundaries? I will not be attending family functions. I will not be lending money or providing childcare. I will not be answering late-night calls for emotional support or crisis management. I will be living my life for myself and only myself from this point forward. Rachel made a choking sound. So you're just abandoning us? Your own stepchildren when I'm trying to start a family? The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. Abandonment requires an existing responsibility. You've made it abundantly clear that I have none toward you. And Margaret will make an excellent grandmother, I'm sure. This isn't you, David said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. The Marie I know wouldn't do this. The Marie you knew was a fiction, I replied. A convenient character you created endlessly forgiving, infinitely giving, with no needs or feelings of her own. That person never existed. She was just a role I played because I thought that's what stepmothers were supposed to do. I stood again, making it clear our conversation was ending. You should go now, both of you. And if we don't, Rachel challenged, her chin lifted in defiance. If we want to work this out, there's nothing to work out, I said. This isn't a negotiation or a temporary punishment that you can wait out. This is my life now, my choice. You'll regret this, she said, her voice hard. When my children are born and you're not part of their lives, you'll regret this bitterness. I looked at her. This stepdaughter I'd raised from age 9 had guided through adolescence and young adulthood and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no wistfulness, just a clear-eyed understanding of who we were to each other now. I've had many regrets in my life, Rachel, I said quietly. Loving you both too much to set proper boundaries, excusing behavior I would never tolerate from anyone else. Believing that stepmother love meant endless self-sacrifice. But this moment right here, this will never be among them. I opened the front door. Goodbye. They left finally, David guiding a still protesting Rachel by the elbow. I watched from the window as they stood in the driveway, arguing with each other, gesturing back toward the house. Eventually, they got into their separate cars and drove away. Oliver wound around my ankles. purring loudly in the sudden silence of the house. I bent to stroke his fur, feeling the steady rhythm of his contentment. "It's just us now," I told him, "and that's more than enough." That night, I dreamt of wide-open spaces, of horizons unfettered by obligation or guilt. I woke feeling lighter than I had in years, as if I'd put down a burden I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. The next day, I changed my phone number. The day after that, I closed my social media accounts. A week later, I began volunteering at a literacy program for adults, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had time for between Rachel's crises and David's demands. I waited for regret to come, for maternal instinct to override my resolve. It never did. Instead, something else bloomed in the spaces where worry and disappointment had lived for so long. Something that felt remarkably like peace. 3 months passed. Autumn arrived, painting the hills around San Diego with golden light and crisp air. I planted new succulents in my garden, hardy plants that would thrive in the California climate. Long after the seasonal changes had passed, a promise to myself about resilience, about growth. I hadn't heard from either of my stepchildren since that night in my living room. No calls from new numbers. No unexpected visits. No messages passed through mutual acquaintances. It was as if they had taken me at my word, finally respecting at least one of my wishes. Or perhaps they were simply waiting me out, assuming that maternal instinct would eventually overcome my resolve, that I would break first. Reach out, apologize for daring to stand up for myself. If so, they would be waiting a very long time. I settled into new rhythms. Mornings at the literacy center helping adults who had missed educational opportunities learn to navigate the written world. Afternoons tending my real estate investments or at the medical clinic where I'd begun volunteering 2 days a week, using my nursing background to help provide healthcare to underserved communities. Evenings with Oliver and books I'd always meant to read or documentaries I'd put off watching, because someone always needed something more important from me. It was during one of those quiet evenings when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment I considered not answering. But curiosity won out. Standing on my porch, looking uncomfortable in a suit that seemed slightly too tight around his middle, was Marcus, Rachel's husband, the father of my future grandchild. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, formal and stiff. We had never been close, Marcus and I. He'd always seemed slightly intimidated by me, though I'd never given him reason to be. "Marcus," I replied, not inviting him in, "what brings you here?" He shifted his weight, glancing back at his car in the driveway as if contemplating escape. I'm here about Rachel." Of course he was. In our few interactions over the years, Marcus had never once sought me out for any other reason. "Is she all right?" "She's fine. Well, physically fine." He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, can I come in? This is awkward enough without having to do it on your doorstep." I considered refusing, but again, curiosity prevailed. I stepped aside, allowing him into my home. Marcus stood awkwardly in my living room, declining my perfunctory offer of tea or coffee. Finally, he spoke. "Rachel doesn't know I'm here. She'd be furious if she knew." "Then why are you here, Marcus?" He sighed deeply. "Because she's miserable. She cries constantly. Her blood pressure is elevated, which isn't good for someone trying to get pregnant. She's not sleeping and it's affecting us, our marriage, our plans for starting a family, everything." I waited, saying nothing. This was not my problem to solve. "She made a mistake," he continued. "What she said at the wedding, it was cruel and thoughtless." "I told her so at the time, but she was," he trailed off. "She was what?" I prompted, my voice neutral. "Showing off," he admitted, looking pained. "For Margaret, for my family, they have money. You know, social standing. Rachel's always felt, I don't know, like she has to prove she belongs with us. And rejecting her stepmother publicly was her way of proving that," I asked. Unable to keep a slight edge from my voice, Marcus winced. "It was wrong. She knows it was wrong. What I'm trying to say is she's sorry. Really sorry. And yet she's not the one standing in my living room saying so." "She's afraid," he said simply. "Afraid you won't forgive her. Afraid of what you'll say. And after what you did with those photos, those financial records, she's hurt and angry too." "I see," I said, though in truth I didn't. The audacity of it to hurt someone deeply, then be angry when they refuse to be your emotional support system any longer. "So, what exactly are you asking of me, Marcus?" He straightened, seeming to gather his courage. "Come to the hospital when our child is born. Be part of your grandchild's life. Let Rachel apologize properly in person. Start fresh." I almost laughed at the simplicity of it. as if years of disrespect and my public humiliation could be erased with a hospital visit and an apology offered only under duress. "And if I refuse?" I asked, curious about his response. Marcus looked genuinely confused. "But it's your grandchild, your family." "Yes," I agreed. "Just as Rachel and David are my stepchildren, my family." And yet that connection didn't stop them from treating me with contempt for years. Why would it be different with a grandchild? "Because it's a chance to break the cycle," he said with surprising insight. "To start over." I studied him, wondering if he really believed what he was saying, or if this was just another manipulation. Another attempt to bring me back into line. "Did you know," I said conversationally, "that after Rachel's first marriage ended, I supported her emotionally and financially for almost a year? That when she decided to become a CPA, I paid for her review courses because she couldn't afford them? That when her practice struggled initially, I was the one who helped her make ends meet?" Marcus looked away. I knew some of it. "And did you know that when David's medical practice had cash flow problems 2 years ago, I provided a bridge loan to help him through? Or that I've never once been invited to spend a holiday with him and his family despite living in the same city?" "Mrs. Thompson, the point, Marcus, is not to catalogue their failings or my sacrifices. The point is that relationships, even family relationships, require reciprocity, respect and care to survive. For too long, I convinced myself that stepmother love meant accepting crumbs of affection and basic courtesy in return for complete devotion. I was wrong." He was silent for a long moment. "So, that's it. You're just done with them, with all of us?" "I'm done with one-sided relationships," I clarified. "I'm done being taken for granted. I'm done making excuses for people who should know better. And the baby, he or she would be innocent in all this." A low blow, but not unexpected. "Yes, they would be," I agreed. "And when that child is old enough to seek me out on their own, should they wish to, I'll welcome them. My will provides for them directly when they turn 18, bypassing their parents entirely." Marcus's eyebrows shot up at that information. "You've really thought this through?" "I've had decades to think about it, Marcus. Decades of hoping things would change naturally, that my stepchildren would mature into the kind of adults who treat others, including their stepmother, with basic dignity. I was wrong to wait so long." He stood, recognizing defeat when he saw it. "Rachel's appointment with the fertility specialist is next month. If you change your mind—" "I won't," I said not unkindly. "But I appreciate your effort today. It shows character." At the door he paused. "For what it's worth, I told Rachel she was wrong. About what she said at the wedding, about how she's treated you. I've always respected you, Mrs. Thompson." "Thank you, Marcus. I hope you'll be a better parent than your wife has been a stepdaughter." After he left, I sat in my darkening living room, Oliver purring on my lap, and waited again for regret, for doubt, for the maternal longing that society had always promised would override all other considerations. It never came. Instead, I felt a curious sense of validation. Marcus's visit had confirmed what I had long suspected, that my stepchildren saw my love as a resource to be exploited rather than a relationship to be nurtured. Even now, facing the consequences of her actions, Rachel couldn't bring herself to approach me directly, to take responsibility without qualification. My phone buzzed with a text from the medical clinic coordinator asking if I could come in early tomorrow to help with a busy schedule. I replied immediately that I would. As I set the phone down, I realized I was smiling. This, then, was the unexpected gift of my stepchildren's rejection. The freedom to say yes to a life that served me, not just them. The space to discover who Marie Thompson was when she wasn't defined by stepmother sacrifice and endless forgiveness. 6 months later, I received a birth announcement in the mail. Emma Grace Sterling, 6 lbs, 12 Oz, 19 inches long. A photo of a beautiful newborn wrapped in a pink blanket. On the back, in Rachel's handwriting, "Your granddaughter. If you want to meet her, call me." I placed the announcement on my mantel next to a framed photograph from my recent medical mission trip to Guatemala. I looked at the baby, my granddaughter, and felt a complicated mixture of emotions. Not regret, not exactly, but acknowledgement of what might have been. In another version of this story I did not call, some bridges once burned should remain ashes. 2 years passed, then 3. My life settled into patterns that brought me joy. Volunteering, traveling, occasional romance with William, a kind widower who taught at the university. Though we ultimately decided friendship suited us better than marriage. I sold my large house and bought a smaller place closer to the coast. It had a sunroom where Oliver could nap in patches of warmth, and a garden that bloomed with native plants every spring. I felt no nostalgia leaving the old house behind. It had served its purpose just as I had served mine as a stepmother. Occasionally, news of Rachel and David reached me through the small social networks of San Diego. David had opened a successful concierge medical practice. Rachel and Marcus were expecting their second child. Their daughter, my granddaughter, was apparently a bright, curious toddler with Marcus's gentle temperament rather than Rachel's intensity. None of this information stirred me to action. I observed it with the detached interest one might have in characters from a novel read long ago. Recognizable but no longer emotionally engaging. Until the day Margaret died. I heard about it from William, who had attended the same charity function where she'd suffered a heart attack. Collapsed right there during the silent auction, he told me over coffee. Gone before the paramedics arrived. I nodded, absorbing the information without comment. William, who knew my history through the carefully edited version I'd shared, watched me closely. Will you reach out to your stepdaughter? I imagine she's taking it hard. No, I said simply. That chapter is closed. He accepted this without judgment, one of the qualities I most appreciated about him. 3 days later, as I was planting new herbs in my garden, a car pulled into my driveway. I straightened, brushing dirt from my knees, and watched as David emerged, looking older than his 44 years. Marie, he said, approaching cautiously as if I might flee or turn him away immediately. Perhaps I should have. David, I replied. What brings you here? He gestured vaguely to my garden. New place looks nice. Suits you. I waited, not making this easy for him. After a moment, he sighed. You've heard about Margaret? Yes. Rachel's devastated. Marcus too, honestly. The funeral's tomorrow. I said nothing. My silence was a question in itself. Look, David said, running a hand through hair that had more grey than I remembered. I know things are complicated between us. I know we deserve it, but Rachel needs her stepmother right now. Her real stepmother? The irony was so rich it could have fertilized my garden. Does she? The same stepmother she publicly rejected. The one she wished had never raised her. David winced. She was wrong. We were both wrong about so many things. Yes, I agreed. You were. A beat of silence stretched between us. So you won't come? Not even to support her during a time of grief. I regarded my stepson thoughtfully. This man I'd once known better than anyone. When your father died, I grieved. I was terrified. Alone with 2 children who weren't biologically mine and no legal standing. Did either of you consider my grief then? Or any of the times after, when I faced loss or hardship on my own while still caring for you both? He looked away. That was different. How? Because my pain was inconvenient. Because acknowledging it might have required you to see me as a person, not just a resource. Because we were kids, he said defensively. And when you were adults when I had my surgery 2 years ago, and neither of you offered to help during my recovery. When my friend Helen died and you both sent flowers but couldn't be bothered to attend the funeral, was my grief less real then, David? Less deserving of support? He had no answer for that. I turned back to my herbs, kneeling again in the soft earth. Rachel made her choice clear at that wedding. Margaret was her true mother. Now she's lost that mother, and I'm sorry for her pain. Truly. But I am not a backup plan to be pulled off the shelf when convenient and discarded when no longer needed. It's not like that, he protested weakly. It's exactly like that, I replied, patting soil around a new basil plant. And we both know it. David stood there for several long moments, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Finally, he spoke again. There's something else. Something you should know. I looked up, curious despite myself. Marcus left Rachel 4 months ago, filed for divorce. He has primary custody of Emma. The second pregnancy, she miscarried. He hesitated. She's not doing well, Marie. Margaret was helping her financially, and now that's gone too. I absorbed this information, waiting for the maternal concern to overwhelm my resolve. It didn't come. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. Suffering brought me no joy, not even the suffering of those who had hurt me. But Rachel is an adult. She'll have to find her own way through this. Just as I did when your father died. David's face hardened. So that's it. Sorry to hear that. Good luck. She's your stepdaughter. Biology doesn't erase behavior, David, I said, rising to my feet again. And neither does adoption or marriage. None of it entitles anyone to unlimited chances to inflict pain without consequence. What about forgiveness? He asked. Isn't that what mothers do? Forgive? I brushed the dirt from my gardening gloves, considering my words carefully. Forgiveness is possible when there's genuine remorse, changed behavior, and an understanding of the harm caused. Without those elements, it's not forgiveness. It's permission. Permission to continue treating someone as disposable. She's remorseful, he insisted. We both are. Are you? Or are you suddenly aware that you've lost your safety net, your emotional support system? Your financial backup plan? I shook my head. Remorse that appears only when you need something isn't remorse at all, David. It's manipulation. He stared at me for a long moment, perhaps truly seeing me for the first time in decades. You've changed, he said finally. No, I corrected him. I've simply stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. Someone who would accept crumbs of respect in exchange for unconditional love and support. What can we do? He asked, his voice smaller than I'd heard it since he was a child, afraid of thunderstorms. How do we fix this? That's the point, David. You don't fix it. Some things once broken stay broken. You learn to live with the consequences of your actions, just as I've learned to live with mine. And Emma, your granddaughter, she's innocent in all this. Yes, she is, I agreed. And as I told Marcus, when Emma is old enough to seek me out independently, I'll welcome her. Until then, she has her father, who seems to be a decent man. And she has you, I assume. David nodded. I try to help where I can. Then she'll be fine. I turned toward my house. I have a conference call with my investment advisor, David. I need to get cleaned up. He made no move to leave. Will you at least think about coming to the funeral for closure, if nothing else? I paused at my back door. I found my closure 3 years ago when I finally accepted that the children I raised were not the adults I'd hoped they'd become. I wish you and Rachel well, David. I truly do. But my well-wishing will be from a distance. After he left, I showered and prepared for my video call with my financial team. As I applied lipstick in the mirror, I studied my reflection, the silver in my hair, the lines around my eyes, the set of my mouth. I looked serene, unburdened. That evening, I sat on my patio with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the Pacific in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Funeral is at 11 a.m. tomorrow. St. Paul's Cathedral, just in case. I didn't reply. Instead, I booked a spa day at a resort in Temecula, something I'd been meaning to do for months. The next day, as Margaret was laid to rest, I enjoyed a massage and facial, took a yoga class, and had lunch overlooking the vineyard. I felt no guilt, no regret, no sense of obligation unfulfilled. What I felt was something rarer and more precious. The peace that comes from acknowledging your own worth. From refusing to participate in relationships that diminish rather than enhance your life. From recognizing that some wounds can't be healed through forgiveness alone. Some require the clean cut of complete separation. My stepchildren had made their choices. I had made mine. And in doing so, I had finally become the stepmother they deserved. One who taught them through unwavering consequence, rather than empty words that how we treat others matters. That respect is not optional in meaningful relationships. That love without boundaries is not love at all, but servitude. It was perhaps the most important lesson I would ever teach them. Whether they learned it or not was beyond my control. But I had at last learned it myself, and that was enough.